it's always a bit nerve-wracking to go on after the guys that put the clicks into chicken and chips. That's the talk my 10-year-old son wanted to see. So working beyond a single recipe for agile success. The reason I wanted to talk about this is I think where we are based on digital transformation is that many organizations are now all looking at teams pulling together, looking at customer-centric, cross-functional teams. It's a target that everyone wants. However, many organizations are also struggling to find that single recipe to actually succeed in that space. And then, why on earth do I think I've got any right to stand here and give you an opinion on that? So I stood on this stage just before COVID at SEACOM in the year 2000. And at that time, I had just finished setting up an agile transformation team. It was self-contained. We had our own building. It was exciting. We'd established ourselves and we were delivering results. I was then asked to move to take that agile principles that would proven to be successful to an enterprise level. And I'm now currently the Chief Digital Product Owner for Nationwide, both run and transform in that digital estate. In that time, I've had a change to the Chief Exec. I've had 5 new bosses, 3 restructures, and I've combined a transform and run team. So it's not too bad. I've got a reasonable view. So where do we start? Well, anyone who's seen me speak before will know that I like to do a bit of abstract thinking. So I thought I'd start with if the clicker works. Maybe point it at the thing. If it's not working, we'll go for manual operation. We'll start with a Rubik's Cube. So, did you know that there are 43 quintillion starting points on a Rubik's Cube? So when you mix it up, there are 43 quintillion versions that you can take. And the reason that was discovered was that a group of computer guys decided to collab with Google and convince them to use their brains, their computers, and work out how many times. That is more options to start a Rubik's Cube than there are grains of rice in the world. However, in reality, there are 20 ways to solve a Rubik's Cube. And actually, more often than not, it's less than 20 in terms of the number of paths you can take. And in reality, there's a lot of parity with that, with Agile and how you embed those behaviors, because there are some common basic principles, but the starting point can be so diverse. Can everyone hear me okay? I've got a bit of a crackle. Cool. Let's see if the clicker's working. Hey, so let's start with words. Hey, I'm winning. Words have power. Words do have power, but it's exactly the major lesson, number 1, that I've had. So time and time again, I have heard the words, Agile doesn't work. Raise your hand if you've heard that. And then I've heard, it's not Agile, it's fragile. And over the course of time, Agile fragile to Agile. I'll switch to handheld. You're going to disconnect that one? Testing? Okay. So Agile's gone to waterfall and Agile's gone to fragile. The reason why that's happened more often than not is that everyone's got excited about the buzzwords of Agile. And so what they've said is, okay, we're going to make it Agile. Let's call all of the product people, product owners. Let's call all the delivery managers, scrum masters. Let's call all the delivery leads, release train engineers, and we're done. We're good. And then they ask themselves why it didn't work. Well, it's not working because they don't really know what they're doing. Okay, let's send them all on a course and let's get them all certified. We're done. Surely they know what they're doing. And in reality, what no one has done in those places where it's gone from Agile to fragile to waterfall is actually embed anyone who's had experience of living and breathing it that can keep the knowledge relevant. And so now what I'm seeing with the numerous interactions I have with people from different companies and in my own experience are the words, Agile didn't work, we've got to go back to what we rely on and what we trust. Because when people are panicking, they go back to what they know. And to the point, I've had some conversations where they've said, we'll use all the principles, but whatever you do, don't call it Agile. Then we'll be fine. So do it properly and, be the one that could be bold enough to say, let's just unpick this a bit more. It's not about the title or the names. It's about actually embedding the right principles. Clarity of purpose. I think it was talked about in the chicken and chips presentation I just saw. When you have everyone pulling together towards the same goal, it categorically will drive up motivation of the team. It will categorically drive up the thinking and the innovation around it. And it will make sure that everyone knows the why. If everyone knows the why, it's slightly harder to get the teams to deviate because they're not chasing the next thing on a list. They're chasing a vision. Now, an example I have of this is when we brought in digital EID&V. We were putting it in, all the design thinking had been done, we were very good, we researched, we did everything we should. And then our testers were doing the final test executions and they turned to our service designers and said, I think you've got a problem because no one's thought of the timeouts. We know what we're doing and we're thinking about the customer, and actually those timeouts are too quick and you're going to drive dropout. And they challenged and they made the design team go back and think about it again because they were being customer-centric and thinking about what they were doing. Another scenario where this isn't true and not everyone is brought into the vision is when you have the hippo effect, where you have a vision of where you're going and then the chief exec says, but I want to do this and I want to do it by December. And then there's uproar and confusion. And more often than not, the response is, yes, okay, or, but it's not on the backlog. Well, actually, that's not the right answer. The actual right approach to that is, we are more than happy to help you, chief exec, because we care. However, for complete transparency, the outcome we're after is this. And if we stray away from it, the opportunity cost for our customers is X, Y, and Z. Are you happy to accept that risk? That way, everyone moves forward and we understand where we're at, but we're not compromising on our commitment to that vision. Girl in my team's just about to have a baby. She's just gone on mat leave. And she's obsessed with need because she's going to be responsible for her life. She's gone on her NCT classes, she's gone shopping, she's been reading the books, and nothing can stop you preparing more than the thought of bringing a life on board. But actually, when that baby arrives, for anyone that's had a kid, my God, no matter how much you've prepared, when that baby arrives, am I allowed to swear? It gets very real, let's just say that. Same is true for delivery, and everyone forgets that. So in one thing that I've really, really learned is to think about the worst case scenario, because the worst case scenarios are actually the ones that will teach you the most. And when teams are going through defining their MVP, more often than not, they think about the leanest route possible to arrive at the outcomes, which is great. But in the design community, when you're identifying that starting point, to think about the extreme use cases is probably the best, because at that point you get the highest degrees of innovation and you actually find all the things that will trip you up down the line. And to be preemptive of them, you might actually find that your MVP is a different starting point. So thinking about that need is really important. Lego. Why am I thinking about Lego? My son has Lego, and when different people have different approaches to Lego. So my approach is, which probably tells you how my mind works, is there's a box that's got Lego on it and the Lego goes in. However, I have some friends that suffer from severe OCD, and this is a reflection of their Lego. I saw this image, and this said to me, it's a reflection of organizations with linear departments being responsible of their bits, all being in different boxes and doing their piece of the pie. And why is this relevant to me? So if I can share this story with you, this is Seychelles. I went to Seychelles this year, and it was brilliant. My husband's from the Seychelles, so it's not like I'm rich. We just go every year. It was the most amazing holiday ever, and my mother-in-law lives in the Seychelles. And unfortunately for us, the last day of our holiday, she became sick, to the point she was in intensive care on the day we were due to fly back. So nice, calm and relaxing to ultimate stress. The flight was at 12 in the afternoon, and we had to make a decision. I said to my husband, I've got to get these boys to school. You need to stay with your mum. So I dropped him to the airport early. I said, go and sort your ticket out to see if you can stay. And I'll come with the boys so they're not disrupted, and we'll come later. So dropped him and the suitcases at the airport, thinking he'll sort that out. I'll go and get the kids. I got to the airport and he was sat there on a chair with his head in his hands, probably like some of you in the audience right now. And he said, they can't help me. So what do you mean? They can't help me. And they said, the only way they can help me is if I call Dubai. So, well, call Dubai. Why, who's in Dubai? The head office is in Dubai. I said, well, call them. No, they won't let me because in their branch, they're not allowed to make calls to Dubai. Well, but it's their head office. Well, no, but they're not allowed to make calls abroad because it's too expensive, so they can't call Dubai. So how do you change your flight? Well, they've told me to do it in the app. Okay, well, get onto the app. Oh, I can't because my phone provider, our phone company, blocked our call access because we hit our limit. When you hit the limit, you couldn't unpick it. It was all very messy. So we couldn't access the internet. So we'll go and get airport Wi-Fi. We go to get airport Wi-Fi. Airport Wi-Fi gave you access for 10 minutes. So we tried to log into the app. The app wasn't working. We had 10 minutes, not working. In the end, I went to the airport counter and I cried to the woman. I said, please help me. He needs to stay with his mum. She might actually die. She's in intensive care. This is intense. And your Wi-Fi is stopping it. She said, I'll do whatever it needs. She reached in her pocket, Lord bless her, and she ripped out about 50 Wi-Fi passcodes, all 10 minutes each though. So I had this pile of Wi-Fi passcodes. So her department was provision of Wi-Fi, and she did her bit. The branch's department was to tell you what to do. I did ask them what was the point of them being there at all, other than wasting airspace. They were not helping us. And in the end, fortunately, because my husband is from the Seychelles, we put out an SOS. We put out an SOS to all his cousins. And 2 of them turned up. They said, what do you need? It's like, I just need to call England. So what I did was I used their phone and I burnt through all their credit for the month. I called the airlines office in London for them to deal with the airlines office in Dubai, which was crazy when you think about it, but it worked. So a very nice man in England helped me. And he said, that'll cost you £1,000 for him to stay an extra week. I had a heart attack, but I said, we do what we do. So I said, right, book it. And he said, right, I've reserved that all for you. That's all fine. However, I can't take the payment because our policy doesn't allow it. We're not allowed to take payments over the phone. That's another process designed off separately because they're in the yellow box, not in the green. I said, okay, what then happens? And he said to me, you have to go online. Oh my God. We were 15 minutes before checking it, before going through the security for my flight and my 2 boys by now. So I was sweating. I was stressed. I went and reached in my pocket and I got all the passcodes that I had left for those tokens and I went through. Fortunately, I paid. I was like, yes, we've made it, we paid. But there was no confirmation email. And I had to wait for the confirmation email to make sure we'd been paid before I could leave him at the airport. In the end, he got there and that was on the 2nd of October and my mother-in-law came out of intensive care only last week. But that pain that I felt in that moment of pure isolation will mean that I will never use that airline again. And everyone on that journey, regardless of their opinion of what they did, thought they did their best job because they aligned to their policy and they did the best they could for me within their remit. Not one person in that core central team had thought about me in my end-to-end experience and the impacts that would have on me. And that's why the absence of a vision, if you go back to the Lego analogy, people working in those separate boxes, if a child has a vision of a motorbike, so to speak, they can get all those different colored boxes and create that single piece. You don't give them a vision more often than not. All you get is a multicolored wall. Is it going to click? Okay, we'll go back to this. So, trust and honesty. There's a couple of guys from my current team here, and I think I'm probably the most honest leader they've had, which is difficult for them at times. But trust and honesty is a real thing. It will make or break teams. And what I've seen and what I've experienced is that more often than not, people are afraid to tell the truth, which is we can't deliver it. And it can be delivered, but if you say we don't think we can do it, it prompts the right question, which is, well, what can we do instead? What can we do to get us closer? From what I've experienced, when teams' backs are up against the wall, they stop thinking about the fundamental things such as retros and having the honest conversations to be really course correcting, because they trade up that time because they haven't got time because they've got to carry on coding. Heads down, probably running in the wrong direction. It's really, really important that trust has come in a number of ways. And then there's that other piece. So when we were in a contained space, my response to the board was, trust us, we've got this, and we delivered it. However, the challenge of going enterprise has been very much a barrier of reporting, process, timelines, those waterfall safeguards, which in reality are more often than not a combination of false truths that give people a degree of comfort. I still don't have the answer to that, because we've got to meet somewhere in the middle. Ultimately, we are spending a lot of money, but trust is a good place to start. Be ready to fail. So we recently did an extension on my house. I went to the top of the scaffolding. It was brilliant. Very excited to see the top of my house from a number of angles. When I did, I had the latch that attached me to those metal bars. I felt very, very strong and powerful climbing that scaffolding. But the reason scaffolding has all those harnesses and bars is to, just in case you fall, we'll catch you, we're there. Everyone's really scared to fail. When I was in my small Agile hub, it's like, let's go for it, let's try it. When it's enterprise and it's much bigger, it's like, oh, but it can't go wrong. And if it goes wrong, who's going to get it? Who's the fool guy? It's not what this is about. And actually, it's not who's prepared to accept the risk when it goes wrong. It's actually about, if it goes wrong, how are we going to protect our customers, and what fail-safes are we going to have in place, and how are we going to learn as quickly as possible to get it right? And I think more time and energy needs to be invested in that side of the spectrum. I think even on a ground level within the feature teams, I see in Jira, the risks column gets longer and longer. And you see the blind assignment of risks to people. I've got so many against me, and no one's had a conversation to say, are you willing to tolerate this? It's actually, it runs the risk of just, well, I've logged it. Didn't you see it? It's not owning it. And so that complete ownership, but also coupled with being prepared to fail, needs to be improved, and something that we should all be thinking about consistently. Football. Hands up if you love football. I hate it. I do love it on a Sunday, though, when my 10-year-old plays. I love it. I don't know what happens to me. It's like the beast takes over. It's like, come on, you've got this. On Sunday, he had an amazing game, but they've just gone up in their leagues. And let's just say I wasn't that sure about the ref. It was his first time. It's definitely bias. And everyone was feeling it. First half, they were down. It was 4-1. And suddenly, as it was building and building, everyone was angry with the ref. Literally, one of the balls went in through the side of the goal, and he gave it. The parents were ranting on the sidelines. My husband was like, come on, kick it. Other parents like, focus, focus. And the kids, bless them, their heads were going left, right, and centre, thinking, who am I listening to? And, they were shouting at each other, parents shouting at them. It was a disaster, and yet they're all dependent on each other. Half-time came in, and they went off. All the parents calmed down a bit. And they came back, and I don't know what that coach said to them, but I was in awe of him, because they came back and they played the strongest I've ever seen them play. And they got it to 4-3. If the one through the side hadn't have gone through, it probably would have been a draw, even with the free kicks that the ref gave away. What's the point of me sharing this with you? When the chips were down, everyone went into panic mode, and they were shouting from the sidelines, you need to do this. I think we've all lived that in our Agile transformation. And everyone lost track of them pulling together. They lost the communication. They weren't thinking about passing over, getting their head up and looking at who they've been passing to. The shouting from the sidelines meant that they were confused and they had no direction and they didn't know where to focus. But the point in which they paused, reset, listened to the vision from their leader, their behavior changed. They started talking together, they understood their interdependencies, and they pulled it back from their darkest hour. There's a lot that can be learned from 10-year-olds, even in the office today. And just to wrap, let me introduce you to a lovely lady called Amy Cratton. Now, according to a popular tabloid paper, Amy is the oldest graduate from her university. Don't know what that means. She started her degree at the age of 54, and she just finished it this year, I believe. Amy's really proud of herself. She's 94 years old, and she just finished her degree. And when Amy was asked how she felt, she said, "Oh, I feel really proud. I've finally done it." But she said, "I also feel like I've got so much more to learn. The learning should never stop." And I think that was really interesting. Amy, she's still teaching people that the learning shouldn't stop. I think for those people that have gone from Agile to Fragile to Agile, think they've tried it, they've learned, it's done. We can get away with going back to Waterfall because it's nice and safe. I think for those people that fundamentally believe in Agile, need to recognize that we're still learning. I'm very conscious of the emergence of FinOps, and actually been following some of the industry stuff on that. It's quite interesting. I'd like to say I was always including the cost of the cloud coverage, but others haven't, so it's a very interesting lens to be mindful of. But the learning shouldn't stop. But it's not about the names, it's about taking the time to learn. And it's not necessarily just about the Agile principles, it's also about the team's learning, being able to embrace that failure. And the bit that everyone forgets about their timeline is actually the learning actually only starts when it's live. And I still see to this day, teams not building in time to actually incrementally improve that live code. We don't ship it and it's done. When it's shipped, that's when the work actually starts and the core optimization of that. So I continue to ask, and I'll always ask my team at every time they've done their planning, what percentage of time did you allow to incrementally improve and reflect on what you've put live? Who's monitoring it? Who cut the code? And if the person that cut the code doesn't know what's going on, we've got an issue. And I think those principles need to persist, and the openness and the way to embrace learning needs to continue and carry on. I am out of time. Thank you very much.